Here we go. So thank you all for joining us today. We're really happy to see everybody and congratulations to the new admits. I know you are super excited to learn everything you can about Stanford. So we're here to talk about some of the nuts and bolts and the important stuff around money. Some of you may feel like you need to get this out of the way so you can enjoy the rest of the festivities this week. So that is our plan here today. We are going to make a recording of this session also available through Cardinal Quad. So if you have any friends who are missing out today, you're welcome to direct them there to see this. My colleagues, Ashley Lippert, Eleanor Callado, and I are so excited to have this opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Karen Cooper. I am Stanford's Director of Financial Aid. We are going to go through these slides to explain a bit about Stanford's financial aid program and answer common questions about how this all comes together in future years and with the billing and payment process. We plan to leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of the session. As I said, the session is being recorded for those who couldn't make it today. Please use the Q&A feature of Zoom to ask your questions as we go along. We've got several members of staff on hand to answer your questions. You may want, however, to just listen to the presentation. We've been working together for a long time and have anticipated many of your questions as we get going here. So with that, I'd like to start with a brief introduction to the Financial Aid Office. This is where students go to get questions answered about financial aid, where staff make decisions about students' awards. We also help you to manage outside awards, which we will talk more about in this session, and the Federal Work-Study Program, which gives eligible students a slight advantage in finding employment on campus. Currently, we are working in a hybrid model. We're fully available by phone, email, and Zoom, in person in Montag Hall by appointment only. In the coming weeks, we'll be fully available in Montag Hall, which you see either behind me or in the slide here, multi-views of Montag. So we're happy to talk to you. So where are you in the financial aid application process right now? Hopefully, you've completed your financial aid application, which consists of 3 pieces: the CSS profile, tax forms submitted through IDOC or the institutional documentation service that you get invited to after you submit the profile, and the free application for federal student aid or the FAFSA. Hopefully, we've delivered your original offer of financial aid through your admissions portal. All subsequent updates and award letters in future years will be made available in Access. And yes, that's Access with an X, as in Axe. It will all make sense soon, I promise. We will be mentioning Access, which is found at access.stanford.edu, quite a bit today. This is your student portal where lots of university business is conducted. If you're listening today and think that maybe I should have applied for aid, it's not too late for most of you. You may still apply unless you were admitted as an international student without eligibility for aid. However, it may be too late for us to let you know about your eligibility by the 1st of May, but your decision to accept the admission offer does not impact the amount of aid that we award, and we will do our best to get a response to you as soon as possible. At this time, we know that we still have a significant number of revision requests as well as original applications that were recently submitted in our queues. We are working as quickly as we can to address your issues as soon as possible. Please be assured that we continue to look at requests for revision throughout the year. Accepting the offer of admission does not lock you into a financial aid package. Stanford's financial aid program is need-based. meaning that we are committed to providing funds to cover whatever educational costs that you and your family cannot be reasonably expected to pay. This formula that you see on the screen now explains how we make decisions and why we turn conversations about "I need more aid" to "Why is the parent contribution too high for your family?" This formula is important to us in the financial aid office, but I want you to think about another formula as well. Cost of attendance minus scholarship and grants equals your net cost. This formula is how you should compare financial aid offers from school to school, and happens to be how our award letter is arranged. At the top, you'll find the details of your individual cost of attendance, a listing of all scholarships and grants we're expecting for you, and the resulting net cost. The bottom half of the page shows the calculated parent and student contributions that we use to calculate your eligibility, as well as any loans that you've been offered. You can think of those items as our suggestions for how to manage that net cost. But let's talk about each one of these components. The cost of attendance. It serves to define the maximum amount of aid that can be offered. You'll never see a bill for this amount because it includes both direct costs, those that the university will bill you for, and indirect costs or expenses that we think you'll have in order to be a full participant in a Stanford education. Financial aid considers both kinds of expenses. It is possible that these expenses may change. If, for example, you are billed a different amount for tuition because you need to enroll part-time and you get permission to do so, your aid will be adjusted to reflect that lower cost of attendance. One detail that I'd like to point out, that student fees allowance that will be $2,145 next year. It includes a mix of mandatory fees for which you will automatically be billed, things like the campus health services fee or house dues or a technology fee, as well as an allowance for things like specific course fees that you may see for some lab or engineering courses, for example. If your actual expenses turn out to be significantly higher, you can request more assistance from the financial aid office. One item that is not included here up front for most students is the cost of Stanford's student health insurance plan called Cardinal Care. Stanford does require everyone to have health insurance. Many undergraduates waive the Cardinal Care coverage because they have adequate coverage from their parents' insurance plan. If this is not the case for you, it is possible for us to include the cost of Cardinal Care in your cost of attendance, and we'll talk more about this later. You'll notice that the indirect expenses include broad categories like personal expenses. We actually survey current students to find out what they typically spend while they are on campus on things like clothing, entertainment, incidentals, or for their books and supplies for class. These allowances are based on that data. Travel is based on your home state and includes 2 round trips per year for domestic students. The next section will list the scholarships and grants that either are being offered by Stanford, by the federal government or state government, or other outside resources. We consider all of these resources to be meeting your need. Net cost is what will need to be paid toward the cost of attendance, not the bill, toward the entire cost of attendance, both direct and indirect costs after scholarships and grants are applied. In this example, even though we've offered $57,000 of scholarship, there are still $25,600 worth of expenses that the student and their family will need to figure out. This parent contribution is our suggested contribution toward the total cost of attendance for the full year. So you'll never see a bill for this precise amount either. We use this number to calculate scholarship eligibility. We have calculated this amount based on all of the information that you provided on your CSS profile and FAFSA, as well as tax return information. We use these two income thresholds, 150,000 and 75,000, to help families understand what their expectations would be at Stanford before going through the process. For families with income less than 75,000, the expected parent contribution is zero. We're not asking them to contribute toward educational costs. For those with income between 75 and 150,000, we've promised that at least enough scholarship to cover tuition. For a family right at the $150,000 income level with typical assets for that income, the parent contribution is just over $20,000. And as a result, we will provide enough scholarship to cover tuition. For both of those thresholds, we make that promise only for those who have assets typical for that income level. We consider your reported cash, investments, the value of real estate other than your primary home, and business assets in our calculation of net worth. If you think about the parent contribution amount at those two income thresholds on a graph of income and expected parent contribution and draw a line between them, you'll see how contributions for most families appear on this sliding scale. Those at higher income levels still do qualify for aid, typically at lesser amounts, depending on their individual situation. We also expect students to take responsibility for a portion of their cost of attendance. In a typical year, the minimum amount is $5,000, $1,500 from summer earnings, $3,500 from work during the academic year, plus 5% of assets reported in the student's name. In a typical year, this is a campus where, as long as students are willing to be flexible in their first year especially, they can find a job on campus regardless of their eligibility for aid. Because the minimum wage for students on campus is over $16 per hour, students typically earn that $3,500 expectation in 7 to 10 hours of work per week if they're working throughout the year. Students typically start looking for jobs when they arrive on campus in the fall. It's really hard to get a leg up on that and find a job any earlier. I want to emphasize that this is an expectation for students to take responsibility for this amount, not parents. We're not going to keep track of your earnings in most cases. Federal work study is an exception. We aren't going to ask you to write a check for the exact amount of your student contribution at any point. If you want to work more over the summer and less during the academic year or vice versa, that is totally up to you. There are other options besides work for managing that student responsibility. Outside awards or private scholarships from foundations, agencies, etc., are another way for students to handle their student responsibility. Typically, those outside scholarships first replace the academic year earnings expectation, then the expected student contribution. If those outside scholarships total more than the student responsibility amount, scholarship from Stanford will be reduced. Another way to think of this is that those outside scholarships cannot be used to replace the expected parent contribution if Stanford scholarship is involved. If there is no need-based scholarship involved, you can rack up as many of those outside scholarships as you can find, and we will process those for you in the financial aid office. We will ask students to begin to report their outside scholarships through Access starting in mid-May. It is notable that I have not mentioned student loans until now. Those eligible for federal student aid have eligibility for federal direct loans. We've offered those loans if we are not able to offer any scholarship funds. Others can be eligible for those funds to help with any expected parent contribution or your student responsibility if you're interested in taking on debt. We do not expect students to borrow to meet their need. As a result, 87% of the students who graduated during 2020-2021 had no student debt in their names, and those who did borrow had median indebtedness of just under $14,000. This $5,500 number may look familiar to some of you. That's the maximum amount that a first-year student can borrow through the direct federal student loan program. As sophomores, the limit goes to $6,500, and then as juniors and seniors, the limit is $7,500 annually. The federal student loan programs have repayment protections that make them a good way to manage educational debt. Stanford participates in the federal student loan programs for both students and parents of dependent students. We also have responsibility for certifying private student loans. I'm not going to go into detail today about all of the loan programs. Please refer to our website for all of the information and application instructions. We typically begin processing those loan applications in August, and we're happy to discuss your options around the various student loan programs with you. You may have noticed that we've given you an award for 1 year, although a typical undergraduate takes 4 years to complete their degree. We do ask you to reapply for aid every year. The priority filing date for returning students is April 30th. You can think of this reapplication process as our annual check-in with you to see if there have been any changes in your family circumstances. If your situation has not changed significantly, you can expect a similar level of scholarship from year to year. I do want to point out the number of siblings in college does have a significant impact on our calculation of the parent contribution. Essentially, we calculate one number for the family and divide it among the siblings in college. If you have 2 family members in college now and will only have 1 in a few years, that will mean a significant increase in the parent contribution. I like to say that you don't need to let us know if you win the lottery. We'll figure that out in the next application cycle. However, if things get worse, if employment changes, there are illnesses, other family changes that impact your resources to pay for college, let us know about that throughout the year. We can make adjustments for that in the financial aid office when it's appropriate, and we look forward to working with you. I would now like to turn the session over to Eleanor Callado. Hi, Eleanor, our Director of Student Financial Services and University Bursar, to talk about the billing and payment process.
Thank you so much, Karen. As Karen said, we are really happy to be here with all of you. I'm here to share some information about how Stanford bills and collects our payments. So bills are sent on a monthly basis. They're sent as a courtesy to share changes, if any, that are made to the student bill. Last year, we moved to dynamic billing. There's no longer a need to wait for that next billing notice to look at your bill. It updates as soon as any changes are made, and you're welcome to check your student account as often as you like and print any statements when you need them. We encourage students and parents to review the details of each bill to make sure they are accurate. Month to month, students may incur additional charges or make purchases like in-room HD TV cable charges. There may be some course fee adjustments or Stanford card plan retail purchases on campus that also posts to the bill. And later on, we'll talk about this program in greater detail. Ashley will share that in the presentation. Next, I'll talk about the timeline of the billing, payment, and aid process. In August, aid that a student has accepted will display as, quote, anticipated aid on their student account. Our new payment system went live last year, and it now automatically deducts anticipated aid from your balance due. There's no longer a need to calculate this and ensure that you're not overpaying. We don't want that. In early September, students are provided with enrollment appointments to add or drop their courses. Shortly after this first day of enrollment, the first bill of the year is prepared, and it's due mid-September. Tuition and fees are assessed and are also available on the student account online, and payment can be made at any time. But as a courtesy, again, Stanford sends a bill notification if a balance exists on the account, so you don't miss any due dates and any amounts that have to be paid. Late September is when this anticipated aid finally disperses and posts to the student account. We strongly encourage students to enroll into direct deposit to ensure they receive any excess aid refunds quickly and securely. As a tip, we encourage you to save or bookmark the billing and due date calendar to make sure you observe the due dates. We'll share our student services site that contains all of this important information at the end of our presentation. Lastly, I'd like to review how to make payments. Most payments are made through our electronic payment or e-pay portal in the student's account. Students can pay on their own via self-service, or they can provision an authorized user to be able to view and pay bills and receive email notifications. There are a number of payment options available for students and families to use. For example, our electronic check, or ACH, is actually our most used payment method. We also have a Flywire and Western Union. They're domestic and international third-party payment processors. And although paper checks and wire transfers take the longest amount of time, those are also available, as well as other methods that will be shared at the end of this presentation. I would now like to turn the session over to Ashley Lippert, the director of the Student Services Center, to talk about the Stanford Card Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. The Stanford Card Plan acts as a line of credit with a $1,000 limit. Students can use it for purchases at most on-campus locations like our bookstore, food shops, or for printing and copying. The amount used for a given month will be reflected onto your subsequent monthly bill. The average student uses about $400 per month. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the Stanford Health Insurance Program. We wanted to remind you that all students who are admitted are automatically enrolled into Stanford's health insurance program, which is offered annually beginning September 1st of each year and costs $6,678. Families who wish to have this insurance fee waived because they have their own insurance plans can do so no later than September 15th. This deadline is August 15th for any of our international students. Please note that this is not the same as the campus health service fee that is charged each quarter. If you would like more information on health insurance, please visit the Vaden Health Center website at vaden.stanford.edu. Now I'd like to talk to you about a really great program we offer here at Stanford to our students. The Mind Over Money program is Stanford's financial wellness program that aims to equip students with the knowledge and skills to make informed financial decisions, to democratize access to information and resources for all students, and to cultivate a culture of healthy financial behaviors and conversations. Mind Over Money offers interactive workshops throughout the year that explore concepts and cultivate skills to help students build healthier financial habits. Mind Over Money staff teach a one-unit academic course, Wellness 183, Financial Wellness for a Healthy Long Life. Also, all students can meet up with a one-on-one Mind Over Money financial coach. This is free. These coaches are mostly Stanford alumni who are excited to support students in attaining their financial goals, whether that is to figure out a feasible plan to get out of credit card debt or to how to plan for long-term investing as soon as you graduate. Mind Over Money's website, mindovermoney.stanford.edu, is the portal to all of the program's resources, including personal financial learning modules, videos, and financial planning templates, as well as access to the coaching program and a listing of their upcoming events. Finally, I wanted to go over today's takeaways. Number one, we mentioned earlier that authorized users can access student financial information. The Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA for short, makes our students responsible for their own accounts. Students can add authorized users to access their financial records only if they choose to do so. Students will learn how to do this over the summer. Number two, please remember to waive your health insurance if your student already has adequate coverage. Number three, students should enroll in direct deposit to ensure any expected financial aid refunds are issued to you quickly and securely. You will also learn how to do this over the summer. And finally, please work closely with the financial aid office if your family's financial situation changes in any way.
All right, so we're all getting ourselves back on here. There we go. I'm going to leave this slide here for a minute. These are important websites that we've mentioned throughout the presentation. And as we said at the beginning, the presentation is going to be available to you through Cardinal Quad, as well as through the financial aid website within a few days. And right now we're going to transition to answering your questions. Thank you for your attention during this. Now, I know that some of the staff have been answering questions as we've been going along. Does anybody have any hot questions that we should handle live on the air here? Let me talk about this last question that I just see coming in. Is aid given to cover Cardinal care? That's a great question. So health insurance, such a complicated topic. Here, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off now so we can see each other. Health insurance, complex, and I will be the first one to admit that Stanford's Cardinal Care program is expensive. It is a very good plan, covers a lot. Go look at vaden.stanford.edu, and you'll find lots of information there about the Cardinal Care health insurance. But it's expensive. You pay for what you get. It gives them access to the Stanford hospital system. The parent contributions are calculated with an expectation that parents are contributing towards the costs of health insurance. That's part of what we're looking at. So that parent contribution is essentially already lowered by the cost of health insurance. However, we recognize that nearly $7,000 is a heck of a lot of money, especially for our students from low-income backgrounds. So for those students, and we will reach out to students individually over the summer who qualify, especially if you're receiving the welcome grant, if that's shown on your award letter. We will cover the full cost of Cardinal Care with scholarship funds. So our first priority is that you get good quality health insurance. If you have, the equivalent of Medicare, Medicaid in your home state, that may not translate very well to California. And taking Cardinal Care is a very good idea in that situation. We will reach out to you over the summer from the financial aid office. We simply ask you to let us know that you are taking Cardinal Care, and we can add it to your cost of attendance and increase your scholarship to cover that amount. For families that have higher expected parent contributions, we may ask you some more questions to get some more information to make sure that Cardinal Care is really required before we will offer scholarship funds to do that. And we may not be able to cover the full cost. So I hope that helps. Are there other questions that the staff want us to cover? Ashley and Elle, if you want to jump in, you can see those questions coming in the Q&A. If you want to grab any of those, go right ahead.
I actually see a great one, being in a new payment system, I'm getting questions about like auto debits from accounts. Right now, we are kind of in a discovery phase of finding ways to do that with our new payment system, our processor. But that's definitely on a roadmap to have available is some type of payment plan over time with auto debiting from bank accounts. We'll be sharing that as soon as we can to our students and their authorized users.
One I want to respond to if we're just applying for financial aid now. So if I did a great job of explaining the financial aid program and you're thinking, why didn't I apply? You can still complete those applications and we'll evaluate your application as soon as we can. Definitely before school starts, probably within the next 6 to 8 weeks or so. Maybe not before May 1st when you have to make that admission decision, right? So that's the kind of timeline that we're talking about. We wouldn't take months and months, just maybe 6 weeks or so to get a response to you.
And I saw a question in there about prepayment for 4 years and 529 plans. If you're in that situation, the best way to deal with that is to reach out to the Student Services Center and let us know what you want to do. And we are going to work with Eleanor's team to help you out based on your individualized situation. So if you go on our website, you'll see a way to submit a help ticket. And that is the fastest way to get a hold of us. And just let us know what you're trying to do, and we will reach out and help you out.
Yeah, if I can just come behind Ashley with that to say, unfortunately, prepayment does not lock the tuition rate in for that first year that you're paying. Right, I wish it did, but it doesn't. And so being mindful that depending on what you're paying, if towards the end of the term or the career, you'll either need to add or maybe possibly be refunded. That's a possibility, again, depending on how much you're paying and how much we're talking. But as Ashley shared, we can help you calculate that and anticipate as much as we can to make the closest, most accurate payment with you.
I also saw a question in there about a specific type of health insurance and whether it would be accepted. That you'll need to reach out to Vaden for. They will tell you what is acceptable and what is not. So please go ahead. If you have questions about that, reach out to Vaden at vaden.stanford.edu. You'll find their website.
And they do have some good information on their site about how to compare plans and make that determination whether the coverage you have is adequate or not. So that's really helpful information. I see a question here about sort of upper limits of financial aid. The way it was asked, is there an income cutoff limit at which point someone's not eligible for aid any longer? And I'd like to address that because it can be a little complicated. And the answer is basically no. There's not, an automatic cutoff at some point at which somebody would not qualify. Although I might say to you, if your income was $1 million last year, maybe you shouldn't bother to apply for need-based aid. But, we're continually amazed every year. I fully recognize that Stanford costs a lot of money. The annual expenses over $80,000 is a lot of money for just about anybody. And they're at their income level, especially if you haven't planned ahead. So anybody at any income level is welcome to apply for aid. We'll let you know if we're unable to offer any scholarship funds. We'll tell you about the loans that you're eligible for. We will help you think about financing options, different ways of managing the expenses. So you're always welcome to start with filling out that federal student aid application, which is free. There's no cost for doing that. The CSS profile is the application that we ask people who are applying for institutional funds to also complete. And the scholarships that we offer from Stanford really make up the majority of our financial aid program. That does have a cost. It is, the costs are waived for students who are low income by the College Board who's created that application. But it allows us to get much more detailed information than the FAFSA does, and allows us to really understand a family's financial situation. I've seen families that have what would otherwise be considered to be very healthy incomes, but maybe they've got 3 kids in college this year. Or maybe there's somebody who's got high medical expenses in the family. So we're going to look at those individual circumstances to make that determination of scholarship eligibility. So I encourage anybody who feels like they might need some help with these educational costs to go ahead and apply.
I saw a question in there about how parents are able to gain access to pay, and the student needs to set up the parent or the authorized user, we call it, in the payment portal. It's fairly easy to do. There will be instructions sent to your student. They'll be able to set that up for you. And once they've done that, you'll be able to go in and access that. But it does have to be initiated by the student. I'm not sure if Elle has anything to add.
No, just that was perfect, Ashley, except that it's also to be in alignment and compliance with the FERPA regulations that Ashley shared during our presentation. Being student initiated, it shares a page that kind of reiterates why we need to do it that way, and accepts an agreement to say you understand what you're sharing with your authorized user. So it's there because it's needed. If I can, I do see a payment regarding credit or debit cards. Unfortunately, we are not accepting credit or debit at this time. But what I will do is in chat, share the page that lists all the full payment options that are available. We have quite a few. So hopefully there's something that works for all of you. And if not, like Ashley's reiterated, just reach out to us. We want to make this as easy as possible for you with what you need.
I see a question I want to jump in and answer about the campus health service fee versus the Cardinal Care insurance. And that's always confusing. Our colleagues at Vaden, the university's health center, have done a good job of explaining this. The campus health service fee is a smaller $241 per quarter next year fee that gives every student, regardless of where their health insurance is, access to Vaden. So all of our students are welcome to going to Vaden, if they have a sore throat, if they get a cut, if you think of it as your primary care. There's also some mental health opportunities that are accessible through Vaden that are covered by that campus health service fee. So everyone on campus has access to Vaden. You use your health insurance when Vaden needs to refer you out somewhere else. So let's say they get in a bike accident on campus. Wear your helmets, very important. But let's say you break a leg, need to go to the emergency room. Your insurance would be involved at that point. So you want to make sure that the health insurance you have will cover you for those kinds of expenses. Longer term care, referral out to specialists, all of those kinds of things would be covered by health insurance versus the campus health service fee. The campus health service fee is not, it's a mandatory fee. It's not one that they can waive. So every student who is living on campus pays the campus health service fee. But the Cardinal Care insurance, that's up to you. It's a 12-month plan that covers them from September 1 through August 31st of the following year. If you do not waive out of that plan by September 15th, you're automatically on that plan for the next year. And that's your health insurance. And the Cardinal Care fees are included in the cost of attendance for everyone. It's under that student fees allowance.
Karen, I see an interesting question about explaining an aid refund versus paying first and then getting refunded later. I'm happy to start, and then if I miss anything, you can add
Yeah,
anything.
great.
But yeah, basically, all the different sources and funds that Karen explained in the presentation. If you should be blessed to have a good amount of help, if there's anything not used with all those qualified tuition and fees and mandatory fees and anything that's eligible, like housing or meal plans, anything that's eligible that's been provided, extended to your student that's not used, could be refunded if it's a refundable item type. Right. So when we say refund to student, it's anything that's an excess that is owed to them that they could then use for other campus costs that may not have been calculated, but our students need a lot, and we want to get that to them via a refund process, right? If we don't
Goes
have
back to that cost of attendance that we talked about,
Mhm.
about how financial aid is taking into account both the direct costs, the things that are on the bill that Elle is preparing for you, and the indirect costs. So your financial aid may be available to help you pay with some expenses like books, personal expenses, right? So that what happens is all the aid gets credited to the student account. If it pays all the charges, and then there's some more to be used for those other indirect costs, we call it refunded. It gets sent to you at the start of every quarter. Those funds become available to students. It's generally students who don't have a parent contribution and who have an outside scholarship that are covering their student responsibility who end up in the situation of getting refunds. I'm looking through the rest of these questions here.
Karen, I do see an interesting one. There's a question about maybe revisiting the parent contribution, questions about how it's going to be paid or how it's expected to be paid by the family, and the student contribution being paid by the student directly. So maybe just
Right.
re-clarify
Now,
that.
remember I said there's not going to be a point where we're going to say, okay, it's time to send in your parent contribution, right? Write that check now. It doesn't work that way. The concept of the parent contribution, that is a number that we calculated. It's an amount that we expect you to contribute toward the cost of attendance. But it's not something that we're going to bill you for. So remember, direct costs and indirect costs. So that parent contribution may go towards paying charges on the bill. It may also go toward helping to pay for books and supplies, travel to and from campus. The student responsibility, the amount that the student is expected to contribute through their summer work and work during the academic year. Often that goes towards their personal expenses, right? Managing their on-campus expenses, maybe paying for their books. I think it's a really healthy exercise over the summer to sit down with your family and talk about who's going to be covering which parts of the cost of attendance, right? Is that part going to come out of the parent contribution, or is that going to come out of the student responsibility? Right? It's healthy to have that conversation and think about how all of those expenses are going to be managed during the time that you're enrolled. Who's going to pay for the trips to and from campus, and how many are we going to be taking? Financial aid covers, considers 2 round trips for domestic students. So coming in September, going home again in December, coming back in January, going home again in June. Students can stay on campus during the spring break at no extra cost. It's part of the room and board costs that they've already paid. So If there are additional travel that you want to plan, that's sort of outside of financial aid purview at that point. And you should think about how are you going to manage those kinds of expenses? What does that mean for you individually?
I saw a question about tuition, room and board being billed monthly. So I want to just explain that a little bit more. You will get monthly bill notifications, but the bulk of your charges post once a quarter. There are incidentals that you might, your Stanford card plan, or you might incur printing charges, something like that would come up monthly. For your tuition, your room and board is going to come each quarter in one large payment that you can make. So if you are on a 529 plan, you only have to set that in motion once a quarter. So you're not going to have to do that monthly to make it a little bit easier for you.
Do keep in mind, we're on quarters, not on semesters. So that's 3 times per year, not just 2. So a little different about Stanford than some other places. Any other questions? I see one about living on campus. Students are required to live on campus in their first year. And students have the opportunity to live on campus for all 4 years. I have to say something like 98% of students live on campus all 4 years. Students really do want to stay on campus, and there's enough variety of different kinds of living situations available to them on campus that it's really their preference. So most students do live on campus all 4 years if they don't take time to study abroad. But it is only required during that first year. Which reminds me, I should say something about studying abroad. So Stanford has a really robust overseas studies program that is managed by our friends in the Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education. Stanford has centers all over the world. Their students are invited to go. They often go in their junior or senior years, often for a quarter-long program that allows students to really be immersed and study in another environment. The great news about those programs is because they are Stanford centers, you build Stanford tuition, you pay the usual room and board, and your financial aid covers those expenses just like it does during a regular quarter. As a matter of fact, when students study abroad, if they're receiving financial aid, they're also going to receive a study away grant to help them manage the extra expenses for transportation, for example, during that quarter that they're studying abroad. So it's a really great opportunity for students to do some traveling and experience other places in the world. So we do encourage students, especially students on aid. It's a great opportunity to do some traveling and get that experience of living somewhere else. See another question about living on campus. Is it more expensive to live by yourself? There's a standard undergraduate rate that everyone pays. Over the summer, actually starting in May, you will receive information called Approaching Stanford that talks to you about the next steps, really goes into much more detail about all of the housing options available to you. But there is a standard amount that students are charged at the undergraduate level, and that is the amount that the financial aid program takes into account, that standard charge. I see one question sort of thinking about, especially the travel allowance and the exact dollar amount. So those travel allowances that we put in your financial aid package are based on our best guess estimate for 2 round trips for somebody from your state. And let me tell you, it is really hard to keep those numbers up to date and have them be accurate. So it's just an estimate. It's an estimate of what those costs will be. If you find that you are spending significantly more for your 2 round trips, let us know and your financial aid can be adjusted. We would ask for documentation of those expenses. If you find that you're able to get away with much less expensively than the allowances in your financial aid package, then good for you. We're not going to ask you to submit those costs and document that. So you can figure that out on your own, what makes sense for you. Just let us know if the allowance that's in your financial aid package is too low. If you decide to use the $5,500 in direct loan, I just saw a question pop by about whether that would reduce Stanford scholarship. No, it does not. So to be eligible for that $5,500 in direct student loan, you would either have to have some student responsibility that Stanford is expecting that you could use that amount toward, or loans can be used to help with the parent contribution as well. So you're more than welcome to have this conversation about your specific situation with someone in the financial aid office who can look at your actual record and make a determination about what your eligibility would be. So it's hard to answer some of those specific questions for everybody. Which brings me to a good point that I should mention. If you're planning to come visit campus during Admit Weekend on that Friday, the 29th of April, we are going to be open on that day in the financial aid office and available to talk to students. So you're welcome to come see us then. If you have a serious concern about your financial aid package and would like us to consider revising your financial aid package, I would encourage you to talk to us about that before we get to that last weekend. It's not important that you do that in person. Talk to us about that sooner rather than later so we can make adjustments before you have to make your decision on May 1st. We are available by Zoom. We found those Zoom appointments with students and their families to be very helpful to have those individual conversations. So if you have questions about your individual situation, go to the admit.stanford.edu website, click on the financial aid tab, and you'll see a calendar there that you can use to make an individual appointment with a financial aid officer who will be able to look up your individual situation and have that in-depth conversation with you. Okay. Anything else? We've got just a few minutes left. Thank you to those of you who are hanging on to the bitter end. Well, this is great. Thank you all for your attention. Thank you to the staff who've been answering all of the questions. I appreciate your nimble fingers in getting all those responses out there. For the rest of this month, the financial aid staff will be available to answer your questions. As I just described, go to that Admit website and make an appointment with us. Always available in email or over the phone as well. So do feel free to reach out to us to get your questions answered. No question is too small at this point. And we're happy to do that. But we all—
it sounds like I'm sorry, Karen, it sounds like a great place to end, but we did get a question about where to email. So Karen, again, we did record the session, so you can listen to it again or share it with all this hopefully useful information for you. We also have some slides and perfect, where to get support with financial aid office. So Karen's great team, Ashley's team at the Student Services Center is ready to help you. And they have great information, and that site, it has some really useful, helpful information too, more about financial literacy. And I think this link has to be updated, but
yeah, we should have taken that last link off.
Yeah, but there was a list of all the payment options, so hopefully you received it in chat. But when you click here and you get the help that you need, like Karen was saying, we're happy, we're here and ready to help you. And we want to make this transition in, and biggest, warmest welcome to you and congrats to you with understanding all of this information, right? So we're here to help. But go ahead, why don't you close this, Karen?
Well, I think that covers it. I just want to thank everybody and appreciate everyone's attention today. If you have questions remaining, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and good luck to you all. I know you're facing lots of really challenging choices, but I am confident that you have lots of good decisions to make in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.